Ronald Reagan once said, surround yourself with the best people you can find, delegate authority, and do not interfere as long as the policy you've decided upon is being carried out. My name is Dr. David Walaloo.
And my name is Dr. Ross Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
Our focus today is employee engagement and the impact on the bottom line of a corporation. That's nationally and internationally.
Indeed, Ross, this issue of the management within companies, be they domestic or global, it almost has the same applications whether you operate in Dallas, whether you operate in Singapore, whether you operate in China, or what have you. And this management issue has become the key now for businesses to decide that their survival depends on.
It couldn't be more true. The expectation in America right now is that workers want to feel engaged in what they're up to. They want to get aligned with what the corporation is, and they want to feel proud to be part of a company that they actually like the product or the service. And what we're finding is that somewhere between 14 or 15% of employees in a recent study by the Gallup organization are absolutely disengaged. What that means is they're actively working against the objectives of the company. And then there's a big middle ground of people who are marginally engaged. And then there's a small percentage of people who say, I love it here. And they put extra energy, they really put their focus into it, and they're fully engaged. And you start thinking about what's the impact of that.
And the challenge is even accelerated more so by now the new work environment, working from home. So companies are not only dealing with that challenge, but also they're dealing with the challenge of how you manage a workforce that is not in the office, that is at a distance. And whether the managements understand what the issues are, it's the subject of many research of recent.
Even the Gallup organization said that the number of people who are disengaged might double because of the disconnect, because they're not at the office anymore. That would mean 30% of the employees are actively working against the objectives of the company. And as much as 51% of them are actively looking for new employment. This is catastrophic for companies.
And it is indeed. Some research I conducted recently indicated that one of the challenges that companies are dealing with right now is balancing between this new work environment, but also how to manage the workforce. And especially the middle management, they don't seem to have the right tools at their disposal to manage that balance.
As you and I have observed over and over again, management was already troubled. Mm-hmm. That is, barely up to the job. Now people were working from home and they're truly disengaged, and the management is failing at a catastrophic level. So we're seeing marginal before, now inadequate. They don't have the right attitude, they don't have the right skill set, they don't have the right training, and they don't have the right procedures to manage people. And you and I have been interviewing people who are working from home. You care to relate what we've been finding?
Oh, as a matter of fact, yes, Ross. The interview we conducted last week with that manager from the big corporation here in Dallas indicated that there is a disconnect between the upper management and the middle management. And this individual that we interviewed, she's in the middle level management, and her argument was that there is lack of communication coming down from the upper management. And that leads to the question where the issue is. Is it the middle management not understanding how to carry out the task? Or is it the upper management not communicating effectively?
Just to add one more thought to that, 2/3 of the people that we've interviewed are actively looking for new employment. Right. And so you take a look at what's going on corporately. We know that in mid-sized companies, that less than 70, it's more than 72% of them have no procedures in place, okay, and no policies in place. And so here's what that really translates to. Any company, to organize themselves, has to have a mission, a vision, values, and practices that the executive team is aligned on. And if the companies don't have those things, they are missing a key element in terms of how do we inspire people to do the job.
So would it be fair to say, Ross, that disengagements from employees that some research have indicated to of recent, especially given the pandemic,
Oh yeah,
is tied to those four fundamental principles, because they have not either been explained clearly to the workforce, or they have not been displayed, like the values and what have you, or the middle management do not understand how to sort of apply this kind of four fundamentals. What's in your opinion? How do you see it?
Here's a perspective. We've been involved in the establishment of mission, vision, values, and practices of a major corporation here in Dallas. And because we were part of the development of that culture, we saw that every office had the mission statement of the company in a framed, it was like a picture, but it was really just the mission. And every employee could quote it. It was simple enough, and it really was the guiding principle of that company. Everyone agreed to it, and it gave them real high spirits. So, if those things are missing, there's several reasons that they might be missing. One is that the leader of the organization never saw value in establishing all those things. And the second is that the executive team is misaligned. It could be there are players in the executive team that do not enroll in the vision, mission, values, and practices, or they don't really fit in the executive team, or they're not qualified for their job. We've interviewed people, let's say the top 3 candidates for the CEO position, and typically one of those people is clearly not qualified even for management. And second was marginally qualified, and typically the third one was a pretty good candidate. So, and that fits every position of all the hundreds of those kinds of interviews. That's a general rule. So we're looking at, what if a company doesn't have a clear vision as to what are we doing here? Where are we taking this? Where are we taking our products or services? Then they don't have an immediate mission. Here's what we're to do right now. Then they don't have a clear set of published values. What that means is there's no value-driven theme that goes through the whole company. And then they don't have practices. And, a practice might be, we as managers and supervisors are going to acknowledge the good work that people do. Well, that makes a big difference in terms of employee morale. And so any number of these things, top management has to establish. And then they have to come and be aligned on those things if we're really going to see the impact corporately. So if we have this wide range of people that are marginally engaged or disengaged because there's no connection.
Yeah. And I do recall when I used to do consulting for the government on both sides, on the policy and the economy, and also working for the private sector in support of the United States government, when we will meet with a delegation, let's say in Singapore or whatever the location might be, and I will always do my homework first. Of course, I will check out the company, read out about its past CEOs, its values, its mission, and so forth, to have a better understanding as to whom I'm dealing with on the other side of the table. And to my surprise, has always been, I could identify the disconnect that exists between the current CEO of that company and the management sitting across from me. And that gives me an idea of how well they are not only representing the values of that entity they work for, but how well they understand where the company is going. And from my perspective, it gives me an idea, an insight into how far I will go with them during that negotiations phase before we move to the next level.
you start looking at the impact that this has on the bottom line of a company. And we start looking at what's the productivity change if a person is engaged. That is, they have the right acknowledgement and so on from their supervisor or manager. Well, it's a 21% increase in productivity.
Which translates to a lot of dollars.
Okay.
The bottom line for the companies.
Also, it is a 37% drop in turnover.
Wow.
There's also about a 15 to 20% drop in absenteeism. So you start adding up all these numbers and you say, hold it, we just brought 20 to 25% more to the bottom line of the company because these people are engaged. And what we're seeing, at least in the United States, is that as millennials are taking more and more responsibility in the workforce, they actually have an expectation of liking their job, of being treated well, of lifestyle. And they have to like the company, they have to be rewarded in certain ways if they're going to truly be productive or just trading time for money.
And that becomes very interesting. That's a very good point, Ross, because what you just stated, not only applicable to, let's say, a mid-sized firm for $10 million budget, $10 million budget, but will that work for a company that is over $150 million, for example, in your opinion?
Well, I've done work with that, and we've worked with companies like that are much more than $150 million. And in the segment that we worked in, it made huge differences.
Okay.
That one consulting project we did, that brought, just in that one division, it brought $16 million to the bottom line the first year. And it didn't stop that year. It kept going and going and going. So that probably brought 50, 60, 70 million dollars to the bottom line over the next few years, which is about right. And the key here is that vision, mission, values, and practices that the executive team decide on and align on. That really brings them together, especially if they have the experience of each one of the people in the executive team got to input what the vision, mission, values, and practices are.
So this is more than just lack of communication. It's basically what you're saying is the corporate culture, is the culture of the company that it's not, if it's not well understood and practiced, could have serious ramifications.
It has very serious ramifications, and especially now when we're looking at the survivability of companies.
Yeah.
We're not looking at profitability alone anymore. We're looking at all these companies that we expect to actually go out of business, fail, bankruptcy.
Like you, we are also trying to figure out where things are and how they're going to progress from a business perspective and how other elements could impact this outcome.
And one of our goals is to inspire you to be thinking about the same kinds of things. We look forward to seeing you again soon.